Hello again, this is Gavin Erickson for my final podcast. I will be doing a presentation on legendary rock musician and music producer Pete Townshend. Pete Townshend was born in England in 1945, and he is the main songwriter and co-founder for the legendary rock band The Who. Besides writing music and doing many live shows, Pete Townshend spent countless hours behind the scenes and the mixing board producing music. Pete produced many of the Who albums, including just about every single engineering aspect of Quadrophenia, which I will talk about in my podcast. Pete also did a lot of work on his solo albums after The Who and during the Who career, including Who Came First, which I will also talk about in my podcast, and an album called Sweet Sounds, which he produced for his brother. Pete is an outstanding, legendary musician and producer, and to this day, at the age of 67, he is still mixing and producing his music. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you. Pete Townshend, who was born, raised, and still resides in England, is known as being one of the greatest entertainers of the 20th century. Aside from writing hundreds of songs and being known to throw down the most energetic live concert, he was a renowned producer and engineer. Aside from being the legendary songwriter and guitar player for the rock band The Who were known to put on the best live concert of all time, which would normally result in destruction of their own equipment and amplifiers, Pete spent more time in his home studio, where he worked harder than ever. Pete had a studio in Twickenham, England, shown here in 1970, where he went on to produce countless records and albums. He designed and set up this entire studio by himself, and it was pretty much his home inside of his home. He would spend 24 hours a day there sometimes, because he needed everything to be perfect, and he would stay in the studio working his tail off until what he thought the product was perfect. In 1972, Pete produced his first solo album, which was called Who Came First. The album came from a concept album, Lifehouse, which was aborted, and on the credits on the back of the CD, Pete says, all instruments, vocals, recording, engineering, synthesizers, in fact everything except Make the Tea, and one ginormous eagle trip by Pete Townshend, also produced by Pete Townshend. So that was his first studio solo album. In 1973, the Who's sixth studio album, Quadrophenia, was pre-produced and mixed by Pete Townshend. He did many recordings down by the beach, and he took train whistles, and also recorded a brass band in the park. He spent the summer mixing this album, and he also flew to Los Angeles to personally watch it get mastered. This album ended up reaching number 2 in the US and number 1 in the UK. Another well-known CD Pete produced was his brother's album, Sweet Sound, in 1982. Simon Townshend, his brother, recorded songs in Pete's studio, while Pete mixed and co-engineered the album with Bill Price. The album was almost ahead of the time, but never fully climbed to the top. Pete Townshend, now 67, resides in the Wick, Richmond, England, where he is currently remixing Quadrophenia for a re-release later this year. Thank you for watching, and here are my sources.